Between 1917 and 1920, the first Red Scare spread nationwide, spreading a series of labor strikes. The press publicized the origins of these strikes as outside influences infiltrating and interrupting the American way of life. At the climax of these strikes, U.S. Attorney General Alexander Mitchell Palmer ordered the Palmer Raids, a series of violent law enforcement raids targeting leftist radicals and anarchists. They kicked off a period of unrest that became known as the Red Summer. The fear of outside influence produced a public panic during the 1950 Second Red Scare, which fueled McCarthyism to become prominent in American life and generated intense fear in the lives of everyday people as it contradicted preconceived American values.
We can't start talking about McCarthyism without first discussing McCarthy. Joseph R. McCarthy was a senator from Wisconsin who served in Congress from 1947 to 1957 and had trouble advancing for much of his political career. McCarthy took the Second Red Scare as an opportunity to draw attention to himself by eliciting fear from the public by falsely convincing people that hundreds of communist spies were in the government in powerful social circles. He accused government members of being communist sympathizers, including Secretary of State George Marshall. In his pursuits of these so-called communist spies, McCarthy launched a series of high-publicized probes into alleged communist penetration of the State Department, the White House, the Treasury, and even the U.S. Army. With his newly accumulated power, McCarthy used fear to create a tight hold on Americans and heighten the pre-existing fear of communism. Americans began to side with McCarthy to protect themselves from being accused. It was known that publicly opposing McCarthy was political suicide because one's entire reputation would be ruined, as well as loss of jobs and connections with others. Republicans even utilized McCarthy and his power as part of their political campaign to gather more supporters and protect their party's safety. Yet they were not immune to McCarthy's charges, as McCarthy even targeted those from the State Department that were part of the Republican Party. Americans eventually turned against McCarthy after he suspected the loyalty of men in the U.S. Army, resulting in all of his followers shying away from him and leaving him with no support whatsoever. These events and ideas were portrayed in Good Night and Good Luck.
The historical drama film Good Night and Good Luck, directed by George Clooney, documents the impact McCarthy had on American society in the 1950s through the eyes of the 1953 CBS News broadcast, See It Now. At the beginning of the film, we are introduced to the staff of CBS News and their fear of McCarthy's rise to power, which represents most of the American population at that time.
It's simply a loyalty oath.
To CBS?
And to America.
You promise to be a loyal American? If you don't sign this, are you and I a target?
If I don't sign it, they'll fire me.
As time went on, McCarthy's accusations became more frequent and absurd. Edward R. Murrow and some of his coworkers decided to take a stand against McCarthy and publicly attack his outrageous accusations.
Our next show is going to be about Senator McCarthy, and we're going to go right at him. I don't need to tell you how careful we have to be. If we are to do this, then Ed and I need you to be straight with us. We need to know, for the good of the peace, if any of you have any connection at all.
This film effectively portrays the different reactions people had to McCarthyism. Most of the American public played into his hand and feared the damage that McCarthy could cause to their life if they were accused. However, we also have people like Murrow and his team who confronted McCarthy and debunked many of his accusations. Interpretations of the fear of outside influences and the result of such influences are reminiscent of the film The Crucible. The Crucible, originally written as a playwright by Arthur Miller and adapted into a movie directed by Nicholas Hintner, unintentionally produced a situation parallel and was an allegory to McCarthyism and the Second Red Scare. This adaptation took place in the Massachusetts Bay Colony in 1692 and was written to be a partially fictionalized version of the Salem witch trials. McCarthy's own so-called communist hunt and the actual witch hunts in Salem represent similar things, where the Salem witch hunt was searching for people who believed in something other than God, and McCarthyism was seeking people who were bringing in communism from an outside influence. During McCarthyism, they feared that communism would infiltrate the country and influence people to believe in it, destroying the fundamental values of the American government. This caused radical action from Senator McCarthy, who said that any man who has been named by either a senator or a committee or a congressman as dangerous to the welfare of this nation, his name should be submitted to the various intelligence units, and they should conduct a complete check upon him. It's not too much to ask. This extreme action to stop the spread of communism is comparable to the efforts of the Massachusetts Bay Colony, when they were pursuing and killing people for believing in something other than God, such as witchcraft and the devil, which fell outside their scope of understanding in the world.
The The McCarthy era changed how Americans reacted to fearful situations in modern America as people began to place more value on confirming facts and data with reputable sources. Social media is a popular way of getting news about specific events, yet its sources are not entirely reputable and do not always tell the truth. Americans are now aware of the false information being spread around social media, therefore turning to research on their own terms from good and reliable sources such as WebMD. McCarthy's exaggerated false information on communist spies gave him the power to provoke fear in the public. The rise and fall of McCarthyism serves as a permanent reminder to Americans to explore the rationality of their distress and confirm the reasoning behind their fear. McCarthy's impact on America struck the citizens with constant fear and worrying about what could happen next in their lives. McCarthyism and communism, in general, brought fear to Americans, contributing to the fear of outside influence. Americans today still fear foreign ideas being presented or entering the country, yet they are typically able to handle them in a reasonable and sensible manner.